Okay, this is the old grille that used to be on the front of my Lightweight Landrover, and it used to basically stick out in front of the wings by about 3.5 inches. So non-standard, it should sit back past the wings by about 3.5 inches, so it had to be remade. So this was basically just knocked up out of some aluminium sheet with pop rivets, and it had a Series 3 plastic replacement front grille screwed on it. So I basically decided I had to remake a front end for it. Now I've still got to make the grid mesh front for it yet, so I know it looks a little odd at the moment, and I've put this 1/4 inch mesh over it as an extra layer of protection. You'll see the reason why in a moment. It's because the radiator is right up against the front panel now, rather than being set back. So as an extra layer of protection, I've put that 1/4 inch mesh on. Once the grille goes on and it all probably gets a painting of olive drab, hopefully it won't look too bad. Chassis is not bad. I do have to do a little bit of welding work on this front cross member down in this corner. What's been happening is there's a large hole there, and for years water's been running into there and sitting in the box, and it's rotten the bottom corner of that box out down there, so that needs a repair job. I did toy around with cutting the whole cross member out and buying some 5 inch by 2 inch box and welding a completely new piece in, but I think it's still got a fair bit of life in it. It just wants a good patching job. Now this front, I've used galvanized steel for the front sheet, and I've used a high chrome steel alloy, like stainless steel, to make the angled frame around the side. Now this wing, I've just hooked this on just to check the alignment, make sure it all pretty much sits okay, and it seems to. They might want to be pushed up a little bit, but I think they're fairly good. Say it's only hanging on this rubber bonnet hook at the moment, so that's all that's holding it on. So I'm going to be taking that off in a second, and I'll show you how the radiator's worked out inside. Let's just put the camera down. There we go. Take that off, chuck it away. Yeah, so I've got to do some, well, I've got to do lots of work in here. Yeah, the steering box is all cleaned up quite nicely and been painted. Let's get this up. Right, put the bonnet back, and I'll stick that bit of wood there to stop the bonnet blowing down on my head. Right, so we have about 45 mil to 50 mil of gap there, but I want to leave a little bit of a space. Now I've got 2 electric 9-inch fans which I'm intending to fit in, here onto the radiator, and I'm hoping they will work. One thing I'm not sure about is whether to have some, what would you call it, ducting, you know, basically mount the fans in a fan plate so that the fans draw all the air from the whole surface of the radiator through the fan and blow it back over the engine, or whether to just leave the whole radiator surface open and just mount the two fans. I can see pros and cons for both ways of doing this. Basically, if it's completely open and there's electric fans on there, when it's driving, then the natural cooling of driving the vehicle forwards will blow air through the radiator and cool it, so you'll get good airflow if there's no plate behind the radiator. Right, so in that respect, just two fans and a completely open backed radiator is a good idea. But if you're stopped in traffic a lot, doing a lot of commuting, and the fan comes in a lot, then you might want to close the fan off. You know, the outer perimeter of the fan, the radiator, and just have the airflow ducted through the fan, so that you know the fan is pulling air from the whole radiator surface. So that's the question: what is the best to do? I think I'm going to go for the easy option, at least at first, and just mount the two fans on the radiator surface best I can, and not cover the back, and test it that way. And if I find there is a problem, that it's overheating when I'm stopped, I turn the engine off at the lights. No, well, I could do that, but sometimes that's counterproductive because you want the fans to still be running. Suppose you can wire it so the fans are still running even after you've turned the ignition off to cool it. So that's one way of doing it. Probably the way I will end up doing it, maybe. Yeah, so yeah, it's worked out fairly well, this. It's just tack welded the plate, and I've plug welded as well. So the angle steel I've cut round the outside and made the shape out of. I've then drilled holes, like 10mm holes, and then I've plug welded the holes, and then I've also tacked them at the same points there. And then I've also ran a weld around the edge, which you'll see in some of the photos that I've taken. I've made square holes in the front, and I've put carriage bolts, M10 carriage bolts to hold the radiator on, and I've put this mesh between the radiator and the front plate. Yeah, so it's getting there. Next little jobs I've got to do, obviously welding the cross member, and I'm also going to do a timing belt change. Now the timing belt's pretty, the cover is very small on this. Got to take the pulley off down there and take these bolts out, and that'll expose it all. Yeah, so I'm quite pleased with how it's working out. This is making the job a lot easier to work on with all the wings off. Obviously I've got a lot of repair work to do on the wings, patching these holes in. This one here is where the where it's had a snorkel. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm making the mesh grill to go on the front of the Land Rover. What I'm using is this large sheet of weld mesh which I got off a friend, and I'm nibbling it down. I've started off using some bolt cutters to cut it down to a rough shape, then angle grinding off the small tabs which are left on the weld mesh. Then what I'm doing is I'm using Tech Weld and a propane torch to rejoin the points back down. You can tidy these up with a grinder or a file afterwards, or both, and get it to look fairly reasonable. Now I could just repaint this completely in aluminium paint and leave it like that, silver, or I can paint it in an etch primer, which is basically it's a two-part primer kit, paint primer kit. You can't really read this, but green self-etching paint, and this is like an acid-based compound to activate it. Basically, the acid burns into the surface of the alloy and makes it adhere better. So that's what I'm just doing now. Basically pull that down into shape and grip it with some mole grips. Okay, I've now got the grill on, put it on with these little like rubber and metal hose clamps in the four corners. I think it's quite good. I've painted it green and fairly happy with it. Yeah, I can get on with some other jobs now. While I'm talking about this, I tried to do the timing cam belt yesterday, and I took the cover off, or started to take the cover off, and I found out it doesn't have a cam belt or a timing chain in there. It's actually got gears, helicals, some helical gears, and no timing chain or belt. So I'm pretty pleased about that, but it probably means the engine is an older Daihatsu engine than I was led to believe it is. But I don't see that as an issue as long as the engine is in good order. I'm quite happy that it's not got a belt or a chain.